This week on Cinemaholics, finally, former Vice President and War on Terror cheerleader Dick Cheney has gotten his very own comedic biographical film from the Big Short director Adam McKay in Vice.
I just never really got the sense that Adam McKay really knew exactly what film he wanted to make, so he made like 15 films.
Plus, Netflix has dropped their latest holiday blockbuster, Bird Box, which stars Sandra Bullock along with a huge talented cast. But is this survival thriller Netflix is championing actually worth seeing?
We cannot say that this film cuts any corners on the creative talent involved.
Later in the show, I talk about Barry Jenkins' newest film, If Beale Street Could Talk, which has finally whispered its way into limited release.
He knows empathy in a way that is savant-like. Like, he really understands how to get people to get into other people's heads.
And we close out Cinemaholics this week with Will Ashton's thoughts on the new Ruth Bader Ginsburg biographical film On the Basis of Sex, starring Felicity Jones and Armie Hammer.
Because like I said, I don't take joy in doing this. Like this review, I mean. Like I just don't. I don't like criticizing this film.
All that and more is coming up on Cinemaholics. Welcome once again to Cinemaholics. He is a pop culture writer for Cinema Blend, and he also reviews films for The Playlist, Comfort Film, and so many more. Hey, Will Ashton.
Hello, John.
And I am the author of the novel Killer Joy, a book about Pixar called The Pixar Theory, and I write about film for Adam Insider, Relevant Magazine, and The Young Folks. I am John Negroni. Will Ashton, how are your holidays?
They're pretty good. How about you, John?
Pretty decent. We might talk later in the show about how I was able to use some of my holiday downtime to catch up on films. I'm curious about you as well. But all in all, it was a good week. Went pretty all right.
Nice.
Yeah. You can find more episodes of Cinemaholics on adamtickets.com, and you can support our show by becoming one of our patrons on patreon.com/cinemaholics. Okay, this is our last call for entries into our exclusive Patreon holiday giveaway. If you're a monthly supporter of Cinemaholics, you can enter now for your chance to win a Blu-ray or digital release from the 2018 movie of your choice. Terms obviously apply. The contest is to correctly guess our top 10 movies of 2018, both mine and Will Ashton's. Now, whoever guesses the absolute closest will be the winner. We're going to be announcing the winner of this contest on next week's show, which may actually, in fact, be our top 10 episode, our top 10 films of 2018. So if you're listening, go to our Patreon now to submit your guesses in time. If you're not a supporter of Cinemaholics yet and you want to be in the contest, you can. Time is running out. So you just have to go to our Patreon, become a monthly supporter or a one-time supporter. You can also enter this giveaway that way as well. Again, that's patreon.com/cinemaholics. We have not seen any of the submissions. They're not going to be painting our picks because I don't know about you, Will Ashton. I have not finished my list, and last I checked, one or two of our patrons still haven't sent their submissions. So really, there aren't that many. I mean, there's one or two submissions left to go. Everybody else, they've already sent their stuff in. So the winner is probably already decided unless some people join in last minute. But
yeah, be a patron.
That's right. Do it. I'm in the final stages of completing my list. But what about you, Will? How's your top 10 looking so far?
It's pretty good. I have like a rough outline, like where I stand right now as far as my top 10, but it's very much in a state of flux because I know there are quite a few films that I want to see or I'm going to try to catch up on as soon as I can. But yeah, I have a rough idea where my top 10 is right now, and it's going to be an interesting top 10. I'm pretty sure it's not going to mirror yours. So I give that hint to our dear listeners.
Which excites me quite a bit. You might be wondering, of course, where is Maverick Hines? Maverick has been absent for a while. He is in the process of moving to Seattle, so he is taking a leave of absence from the show. We're very sad to see him not be here for a while. We don't know how long that will take. He's in the middle of some big life stuff, so Maverick Hines, we're saying adieu for now. Hopefully we can have him back soon.
Is he going to still produce a top 10 list, even if he's on the air to read it? Is he going to produce a list that we can read in his absence?
I don't want to promise anything, but I hope that yes, at the very least, we have to share with the listeners where he landed for the year, because as our listeners appreciate, Maverick Hines has some of the most bold and audacious film opinions in the business, and I cannot wait to hear where he landed for the year. So that is our upcoming holiday giveaway. I think we're going to shut down entries in the next few days. So by the time you're listening to this, it might already be too late, but you should check anyway. Hopefully you'll be able to enter just in time. We want this to be anybody's contest because honestly, Will, I've been laying hints. I think that one of the fun things about this giveaway is that it really rewards faithful listeners of this show. If you've been listening to Cinemaholics throughout 2018, you can kind of understand or kind of get a good idea of which films you and I really like. So I think the people who are going to get closest to guessing where we landed ultimately are going to be the ones who've been paying attention. And to me, that's the best way. That's the best way to win a contest is you spent all of this time listening to us ramble on about movies. You might as well get rewarded for it, I say.
I believe that's fair.
All right. Well, let's just get right into it. Will Ashton, what is our first review for this week?
Sure. It's Vice, which is the new Adam McKay film he wrote and directed. Is this the first film he has written by himself?
Good question. I want to fact check that actually, because I know that he wrote Big Short, but
not by himself.
No, because Big Short had a bunch of writers in it, maybe more than
I think two. I thought it was just two, but I could be wrong. Well, it's like two and then based on the book by Michael Lewis, I believe. But yeah, I believe this is his first film by himself. This is like a full Adam McKay experience. Un film day Adam McKay all the way. But it's roughly about the uprising of Vice President Donald Vice President
Rumsfeld, who was our vice president. Yeah, no.
Nah, what a twist that would be.
Yes.
Vice President Dick Cheney, who was the VP for George W. Bush in the early 2000s. Mm-hmm. And as the film depicts, it kind of colored how our current state of affairs have been dictated in many ways, but at the same time, he is such a secretive kind of behind closed doors figure that the film is doing a lot of guesswork. It's a lot of like speculation to the film's comedic joy, I guess. It tries very hard to like admit up front, like, hey, we're just telling it how we think it is, but please don't take this as factual.
Yeah, we're doing our best. Obviously, a lot of creative liberties and truth liberties have to be taken because of how secretive this person was.
You even have like a little text card at the beginning, in a fairly colorful fashion that explains, which is probably the best joke in the film, in my opinion.
Oh, I disagree, but we'll get into it.
Yeah, but anyway, so Christian Bale is our title character, Dick Cheney. Joining him are Amy Adams, Steve Carell, Sam Rockwell, Tyler Perry. I'm trying to think who else is
Alison
in the film.
Pill.
There you go.
Lots of cameos on top of that.
Yeah, I don't want to give any of those away. But as a film, should I get into my early thoughts of the film, or should we play a clip?
Let's play a clip, Will Ashton. Let's get people interested. So here's a quick clip from the trailer for Vice, and honestly, this is what sold me on the movie.
What do you say? I want you to be my VP. I want you. You're my vice.
Well, George, I'm the CEO of a large company. And I have been Secretary of Defense. And I have been White House Chief of Staff. The Vice Presidency is a mostly symbolic job. However, if we came to a different understanding, I can handle the more mundane jobs, overseeing bureaucracy, military, energy, and foreign policy.
Yeah, right. I like that.
All right, that is from the trailer for Vice, which, as you said, big cast. Adam McKay is somebody who kind of moved people to sort of appreciate his work in a new light, I would say, with The Big Short. I don't think people really looked at Adam McKay as a serious filmmaker in like the Oscars, categories until The Big Short happened, because before that he was much more well known for his collaborations with Will Ferrell, obviously. I think Anchorman, Talladega Nights, of course, and Will Ferrell produced this film along with a lot of other Adam McKay mainstays. So it's an interesting film in that respect. Probably this does feel like a natural next step from The Big Short. The Big Short was a film, was nominated for Best Picture. It covered the 2008 mortgage housing crisis in a way that was funny. It was sort of taken comedically, but it was also pretty straightforward in its storytelling. It was dramatic in places, and it laid out all of this horror that happened in the late 2000s and just unpacked it for people who might not have been as politically involved or engaged during that era, especially people our age, Will Ashton, I guess, because for me, this was a time in my life when I was, the Dick Cheney years I was in from elementary school all the way through middle and high school.
Yeah, same here.
Right. And then Big Short was late high school, early college for me. So it's hard for me to sort of look at this film from an objective angle because some people, they know this era. They know the Dick Cheney years. I'm very curious what those people will say about a movie like Vice, because Vice covers his life in a way that maybe some people will be like, I knew this already. Why am I watching this? But I want to hear from your thoughts, Will, because you are somebody who I suspect maybe you're like me. I did not know this much about Dick Cheney going into this movie. I really did not. I knew some things. I knew obviously a lot of things from the Bush era, but I had no idea how far back this guy's political career went. His early days, how he got to this point, how he was involved with Donald Rumsfeld, all of that was news to me. And I should also mention, you saw Vice way before I did. And around
a couple weeks, yeah.
Yeah. Around the same time, I saw it today. So you saw this when critics were really sounding off, basically. So
sure.
Where are you at?
Yeah. So the film is intentionally divisive. It's not, if you're expecting this to be a fairly straightforward biopic, don't expect that.
It's not objective. It doesn't tell both sides equally, whatever that means. It's it's not a uniter.
People will say it's biased. I guess that's the word that people, I think critics of the film, favorable and not, will say that it's biased. But
the nicer way to put it is it takes a side. It actually has the courage of its convictions.
In a way, yeah. But at the same time, yeah. So I guess I'll come back to that thought. But so as a film, it's intentionally divisive. I think it doesn't play it safe as far as its execution. It plays a lot with editing, style choices, writing choices, character choices in a way that sometimes is interesting, sometimes not. It feels kind of like a hodgepodge of styles, which I knew that going in, so I was expecting that. Mm-hmm. And I knew that it was going to be pretty messy, because I think the film is open about it's being messy because, like we said at the beginning, it's kind of doing a lot of guesswork. It's just kind of like saying like, hey, this is the best we can say as far as like what we think happened. But ultimately, this is a narrative film from an outsider's perspective, so we can't say for sure.
Right. But and the Big Short kind of did the same sort of thing, where it experimented, it did kind of new, unexpected things. And I'd say Vice does more of that, honestly.
Yeah. But the thing about The Big Short, and I didn't love The Big Short, but I liked it. I would say it's a good film.
Same here. Yeah.
I think with that film, the messiness kind of added to its favor in the way that like that film was like, look, we can't really point fingers at one exact person. Like, this is like a whole stew of things that are going on, and like we're just gonna break this down as simply as possible. But just know this is like a big cluster. You know what? So with this film, though, it's more or less saying that this is the guy who's kind of responsible for a lot of bad things that are going on right now, which makes that style kind of odd in a way. But at the same time, I kind of respect that the movie is willing to be this audacious and this pointed and this kind of liberal in the sense that like it's going for a bunch of different things at the same time. But with that said, at the end of the day, like once I finished the film, I have an idea what it wanted to say, but I don't really know if I knew what it wanted to say about Dick Cheney as a character. And particularly by the end, I was just kind of not at a loss, but still kind of just confused as far as like what exactly do you want me to take away as far as like who he is and what his objective is. Like, I really don't know if I ever pinpoint exactly what Adam McKay was saying about why Dick Cheney did half the things he did. I mean, you could say on like a fairly surface level, like he was addicted to power and like kind of that tale, but like it's sort of like Shakespearean as look at it. But as it stands as a film, I think it has good chunks. I think there's a good film in there, but I don't think it's a good film.
which I actually disagree. I think it's good. Yeah, I think this is a good one. And I think the criticism, I haven't read a lot of reviews for this, and I haven't seen anybody make this claim yet, but I have a feeling some of the disarray people are having with this film is that maybe the Dick Cheney character is maybe implied to be explained. Like, his villainy is because his wife corrupted him, which I suspect that's where some people are at. And they're feeling a little bit like that the movie is pinning Dick Cheney's villainy, his awful actions on Lynn Cheney in a weird way because of the way the film is structured. And there are a few pivotal scenes that sort of imply that he happened because his wife sort of pushed him into this life. Now, I sort of push back against that to a great extent, honestly, because I don't think that's really what the film is getting at. But I do respect the opinion that the film isn't clear in what it's getting at. But that's where I relish in this film. I like its quiet subtlety in terms of what it makes of Dick Cheney himself. I think there are a lot of takeaways you can get from his personality and from who he is as a person and all of that crazy stuff that you can take away from this movie. There's so much Dick Cheney in this movie. I mean, Christian Bale, to his credit, sinks into this role in a way that mystifies me. I feel like I'm actually seeing Dick Cheney on screen, and it's almost confusing at times because you're getting so much of a person who I think the film's goal at the beginning is, hey, you don't know much about this person. He's kind of a ghost almost. And the point of this movie is to peel back the layers and sort of unveil and take away the mystique of Dick Cheney, which for some people I can see as being very unsettling because you have to revisit the horrors of the Bush administration, which resulted in just tragic loss of human life, shameless corruption. I mean, some things that have led to really politically terrible realities that we're stuck dealing with at this current time. And Dick Cheney was sort of the mastermind behind all of it. And the film does this weird thing where it villainizes him as much as it humanizes him, but for me in a way that doesn't make him sympathetic at all. It doesn't say, well, Dick Cheney had a point. It is firmly anti-Dick Cheney, throughout this entire thing. I just don't see how anyone can argue otherwise. But in all of its anti-Dick Cheney subject matter and all of its anti-Dick Cheney messaging, it also, to me, is just telling this story of what people who are quietly powerful, what they do to secure that power, how it affects real lives, and there's nothing else on top of that. And I think the big flaws in this movie, you can maybe point to, there's no catharsis here, which I think a lot of people are seeking. Maybe this film is coming out at the wrong time because people are kind of wanting something different in this current political era where the Dick Cheneys of the world are profiting and they're sort of relishing right now in their power. And sort of feels like this film is kind of misplaced almost, I think some people would argue. And then I think the other thing is, honestly, structurally, this film loses steam in a few areas in the second and third act. I think that the first half of this movie and then the midpoint, that's where your good movie is, I would argue. I think there is a gag in the midpoint of this film that absolutely had me in stitches. It was one of my funniest laugh out loud moments, maybe because I am such a hyper politically, obsessor, that I just found this so hysterical the way that they did it, and I don't want to give it away in the slightest. But to me, that was the gag of the movie. That was the funniest thing. It peaked in that moment. And then when you really go through the Dick Cheney vice president years, the pacing just loses it. I think the pacing in the first half, pretty solid, but then the pacing in the second half it's a little harder to follow because it's doing so much with so little, honestly, like you're saying, like so little information. But I think that it does find itself again by the time we get to the very end. And I can't say it's a bad movie. I think that it's still pretty good. And is it a little unwieldy in all of its experimental filmmaking styles? Totally. But when its jokes and audacious ideas work, I really enjoy them. And so I struggle to say that this one's a skip because I think some people who are interested in this, who want to sort of revisit these years, maybe they just like torture or something. No pun intended or reference intended. Maybe they just like to sort of relish in uncomfortable subject matter, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Then this film will absolutely do that. And I guess that's where I was at. I went into this kind of wanting to recontextualize the Cheney years as somebody who lived through them in a much more politically ignorant time in my life because I was younger. But I don't know for Will if you would agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, to be clear, I don't think it's a bad film, and I don't think it's like a slight film. I enjoyed the experience of watching it, and I was never really bored by the film. I just don't think it qualifies as a good film as far as how the execution is. I think it's just kind of a mix of quality altogether because it feels like a lot of different films at once. And I just never really got the sense that Adam McKay really knew exactly what film he wanted to make. So he made like 15 films.
Would you say it's the editing or it's also just the
it's
production?
Totally the
and all
editing.
of it?
No, 100% the editing. Because I was going to bring that up. I'm glad you did, because I think this is a film I would show if I was teaching editing. I would show this film not because I think the editing is good. I actually think the editing is pretty bad on the whole. Especially if you like watch the scene in the trailer that they kind of frame the trailer around with Dick Cheney and George W. Bush talking to each other.
Yeah.
That scene in the trailer is way better edited than it is in the
You're
film.
right.
Like,
No, you're totally right. Yeah. Well, but my only disagreement is that I think that this film has good editing in parts and bad editing in parts. And
Well,
I
that's
just
the thing.
don't think it's a wholly badly edited film.
That's the thing. So what I was going to get at is that to me, it feels like a edit of the film in the sense that it feels like a version of film that's neither the best nor the worst. It feels, I mean, I've heard people describe it as like a test screening version of the film. And I think people are saying that as like, it's like bad and unfinished. I think it's just more like, it just feels like a version of film because like, is this good? Like what are some notes? Like, it feels like the people are expected to come out like with the notepads, like, all right, so what things would you change? What things? Cause there's like a lot of segments of the film where it feels like large chunks of film are cut out or need to be filmed. And it doesn't help the movie cuts to black like 15 times. So it feels like, is there like something missing here? Or is the movie just kind of expect you to know this stuff? I mean, I don't know. Like, because especially when you're talking about like the pace of the film is really, really weird. Like the way that it's drawn out for the first third and then super rushed for the Cheney years. Mm-hmm. I think that's the problem that people are having.
You mean the
like,
VP years, yeah.
Yeah, sorry. The VP years feel very rushed. I think they were sold on the movie being mostly about the VP years. Mm-hmm. And I just think like, I'm not against what the film is doing for the first half. I just don't think it's quite as interesting as Adam McKay might think it is. Like, I didn't know that stuff. I mean, that's fair. Like, I learned some stuff, but I think they could have communicated that in a shorter amount of time and spent a lot more time with the actual W. Bush era and done more with what it's saying. Because especially at the beginning, it feels like it's repeating itself a lot in a way that I found at a point kind of grating until we actually got to, I think, the scene you're talking about, like the midpoint where we actually kind of get the actual plot moving along.
What do you mean by repeating itself then? Do you mean repeating itself in what it's trying to say or certain scenes in particular? Or?
Well, we have like a narrator character who is played by Jesse Plemons. I won't give away who he ultimately is because it's a big secret.
It's great.
Yeah, I
thought it was like a great reveal.
I think that was a good way to. I mean, I like how it ended, and I kind of wish the movie ended at the point where his story ends. Not like at that exact point, but like close to it.
It kind of does. Okay, but all right. Yeah, we won't get into that.
That's like the perfect way to end the movie. And it's like, oh yeah, that's great. That's like a great ending for the film. And then it goes on for like 15 or 20 minutes more. And I get what they're going for, but it's like, if you just end, like the movie has like 20 endings too. And that also adds to the whole nature of the film feeling like it's like still a work in progress that we didn't quite, like I didn't get that sense, like I said before, that Adam McKay really exactly 100% knew what he was saying here.
See, I guess we see the same thing, but where I see it as sort of breaking rules to sort of maybe not. I can see how it will disturb some viewers or sort of jar some viewers, I guess is the better word. But for me, I was with it the whole way through. And even though there were points where I would agree with you, I think that there is a better film in here. I just don't think what we're left with is a mixed film or average film. I guess I'm hearing from you that this is more average, middle of the road.
Mix, I think it's better. I wouldn't call it average.
Okay. Then fair enough. I do think it's a little bit better than what you're saying. So maybe we're not actually that far off, honestly. I just think that there is something here that is salvageable, and you do have to sit through some clunky moments, that's for sure. But I mean, there are so many, the things that stick out to me in this movie are set pieces that just feels so much more interesting and different to me than a lot of other films I've seen this year. So I guess I'm just sort of, my heart is giving this film a pass in a lot of its grave misfires, honestly, because a lot of what you're saying is totally valid. And I really, you know, I was thinking and feeling the same thing. But then every time this film would lose me, when it would rush through a Cheney VP thing, and I'd be like, oh, I kind of want to slow down a little bit, or I kind of want to speed up a little bit. It would do something like have two of our main characters speak in Shakespearean dialogue, right, for an entire scene. And it would hook me all over again, because it was when those moments happened that I sort of felt like I was in the hands of somebody who was also a bit confused and disoriented. And I was with it for those moments because I could sort of appreciate, I think, to what you were saying about The Big Short, the chaos and messiness of it. Now, I'm going to say I don't think this is better than The Big Short, which I don't think is a spectacular film. So I think we're sort of agreed on that. I think it's almost a step back from The Big Short in a couple of ways, but I do think that Adam McKay is on the right track, I think, with his like politics trilogy, whatever you want to call it. Like, I guess his Bush trilogy. And at this rate, I don't know what he's going to do next, but I just want to see more from him on material like this, because I do think he has an interesting voice when it comes to conveying and unpacking really complicated moments in our American recent history in ways that are interesting and sort of shed light in ways that some people just don't care about, I guess, because honestly, a lot of people don't know a lot of this information because the movie kind of says this outright. A lot of us just are so busy and we don't care, and we have so many other things on our mind, and it's hard for us to be politically active and engaged in ways where we're really analyzing our government, conservative or liberal. And that's one of the theses of the movie, honestly, among many. And there's something about the way that Adam McKay is making these films that I really appreciate, and I don't want to discount. I don't want to diminish this film too much, because I don't want to turn people away from something that they might get a lot out of. And I do worry that some people will go into this movie getting something that they hate and despise, or maybe something they just think is okay, fine, whatever, depending on where you're at. Well, maybe closer to where you're at on this film. But I think it's worth checking out. I don't know.
Yeah, I'll check it out. I mean, for me, I feel like the movie is so inconsistent that my opinion of the film is fairly inconsistent, in the sense that like I feel like my opinion of the film gets like different each day. Like some days I'm pretty negative on the film, and some days I reflect more on the positives. And I think that's just me like thinking about different scenes of the film. Like 'cause, like I said before, every scene is like a different quality. So like there are some moments in here that are like genuinely great, and then some moments that are pretty good, and then some moments that are like, all right, that's okay, whatever, serviceable. And then there's some moments that are just bad, like just really bad. But
I don't think I can get there. I don't think there was anything that I thought was painfully bad, personally.
Well, I guess, yeah. I mean, how did you feel about the mid-credit scene?
I absolutely adored it. I thought it was fantastic.
I thought that
scene.
That scene is weird for me, because I think the first joke in it is one of the best jokes of the film, and the last two are like the worst jokes in the film.
I was laughing so hard still throughout that whole thing, and obviously we won't give it away, that I was with it. It worked for me.
Yeah, but no, I think I agree with you more than I don't. I think there is something that's like workable or serviceable, I think you said. In here, there's definitely like a really good, or at least a good film in here.
There's something better and tighter in here.
Yeah, I just think they needed to sit on it for maybe a year. Like if they didn't rush it out into like this December release date for award season in 2018, if they had just maybe pushed it back to fall of 2019 and really kind of, if Adam McKay just really sat down, focused on what he was trying to say, kind of maybe did some more test screenings and just got exactly what he wanted to say.
Maybe if he recruited the talents of Zack Snyder, and Zack Snyder created the ultimate Vice cut, is what you're saying?
All right. I'm not going to feed into this, but no, I just think that this just feels like a version of the film. It feels not incomplete, but like undecided.
Over-complete in some ways, some people might say.
Yeah, I just think, I mean, that's fair. You could argue that if he spent too much time on it, it would be overworked. So it may be beneficial just to release it as it is. Maybe it's like one of those films like it does have a lot of Oliver Stone qualities to it, and maybe it'll be like one of those movies that like he'll like make several director's cuts for in the future. I could see that happening, because it feels like there's a lot of footage in the film that was not.
Yeah, there's a lot of things from the trailer that didn't make it in here for sure.
There's reportedly a musical number that got cut. like a big Broadway musical number. I really want to see that.
Same here.
I hope that gets in the deleted scenes or something. I don't even know if they filmed that. I just heard that was in the works. But
we haven't talked too much about the performances, and I don't want to overlook that because honestly, I think the performances are hit or miss for some people. But I thought, again, we already mentioned Christian Bale. Goes without saying, he's probably going to get a nomination for Best Actor. I don't see him missing that. This is his darkest hour, Gary Oldman. But also Amy Adams. Go ahead.
No. I was gonna say, you bring that up, because I also want to say I think the makeup is really good in this film.
Yeah, it is.
Sort of like it never felt distracting for me. Like I didn't feel like this is a man in a makeup suit.
The older Cheney that he portrays is much better than the younger, because the younger Cheney, it's just that's just Christian Bale. I had a harder time.
Really, I was pretty good about like just seeing Dick Cheney. Like I never really felt like it was a performance to me.
Same here, and like I mentioned, I just think Amy Adams, she disappears into this role. Steve Carell, I thought this was such a good role for him. It was exactly right in his sensibilities, because I thought he'd played a mean Don Rumsfeld. Like he played that cocky, douchey Republican congressman in a way that I thought that was pitch perfect casting.
I'm gonna have to disagree with you about Steve Carell. I did think Amy Adams was very good. I don't think it's like top tier Amy Adams, but I thought it was very good.
Not top tier.
I've heard people like say like this is like one of her best performances. I don't think it's quite there.
No.
It's good. But Steve Carell, though, I'm gonna have to disagree with you. It felt cartoonish to me, truth be told. But here's the thing about
Don
Steve Carell.
Rumsfeld was kind of a cartoonish guy.
I'm not gonna let that slide.
He really was, though, and I don't know. There was, this film needed that kind of character, I guess. Like if Don Rumsfeld had less charisma and less like memorable lines, this would have been a lesser film, in my opinion.
Well, I agree with you. Like for that opening scene where he's like giving the speech, like I thought it worked great for that scene. But every other scene, it felt like smart brick.
Okay. I'll meet you in the middle, because there was one scene where it was this sort of like, you got a real future in you, kid. You know, all you need is a gimmick, and that part was a little. But all right.
This, like, ultimately, I'll have to admit that I think this might be a little bit of personal preference, because I've noticed of late that the Steve Carell performances that really stick with me are the more understated, minimalist, nuanced ones. Like for me, his best performances of late have been in Last Flag Flying and Beautiful Boy, where he's just kind of grounded and sincere, and there's like a melancholy to it. I'm not crazy about the kind of more bombastic roles he's been taking of late.
Well, I mean, don't forget about Alexander and The Terrible, Horrible, No Good, Very Bad Day. I mean,
who could forget that film?
That was him just at his most restrained. Well, and what was that one film? Foxcatcher.
Yeah, I liked him in Foxcatcher.
Yeah.
That's a kind of divisive performance, but I thought he was pretty good.
Last Flag Flying, I'll agree with you there. That one of my favorite Steve Carell performances.
I think that's maybe in my top 5 for his performances. Yeah,
it may be my favorite recent Steve Carell performance. It's my top 1, maybe top 2. I don't know. But
no,
okay.
I really that. Yeah.
And then Sam Rockwell. I adored his George W. Bush. This really worked for me. Maybe this is where our disagreements are really starting to become apparent, because for me, Sam Rockwell channels George W. Bush in just the right way, where it's just believable enough, but then also for the purposes of a kind of a comedic movie, it works too. Like it does both things. And I can totally see some of the criticism coming, that it's overdone or that Sam Rockwell doesn't quite look the part enough, but I believed it. And I think this speaks to what you were saying about how some scenes were so different tonally from others. And in the Sam Rockwell scenes, it's like a totally different movie almost, but it still worked for me for some reason. And maybe I can't explain it, but I really liked this George W. impression that he did. I think it really worked here.
Yeah, I think impression's the key word.
It is an impression. Yes, it is a Saturday Night Live impression. I will make no misgivings about that.
Sure, that's the thing. Is that like I think if you go into the film expecting him to be a key player, you should know that he's probably in the film like less than 25 minutes.
I mean, yeah, it's like a handful of scenes, it feels like.
Yeah, like, but the trailer makes it seem like he's like the second lead, and that's not the case. Like, he's
definitely not.
Fairly minimal in the film.
That would be Amy Adams. She has second billing to Christian Bale.
Sure. Yeah, but yeah, it's definitely like definitely a and Steve, what's his name, Sam Rockwell performance. But I think it works for what it's going for, in the sense that it's like a bit role where he's kind of expected to be kind of cartoonish and aloof and dumb. So it fits the film. It's fine. I just I don't see it like as a performance. I see it, like you said, as an impersonation. And for me, it was enjoyable to watch. I mean, I think Sam Rockwell is always great to watch, but I never felt like I was watching a performance. I just felt like it was, and like you said, a Saturday Night Live impression.
This feels like a film we need to revisit in a year's time, honestly. But okay, before we get into our final thoughts and grade this movie, no, you have one more thing.
One more thing. I think Tyler Perry is fantastic.
He is.
In this film. He is eerily
captures it
accurate.
Perfectly. Well, then also, who played Condi Rice? Was it Lisa?
I was gonna say she was great too. I don't know who she was though.
I do know who she is, but at Lisa something, and
they're
thought
both
it was
like on point. Yeah, 100%.
I thought that was Condoleezza Rice for a moment.
Right.
I was like,
yeah, like when they were both on screen, it's like I got goosebumps like watching his Colin Powell, because it's like eerily accurate, especially that famous UN telecast or was that UN? I forget. Was it?
I think it was. Yeah.
UN? Yeah. That's like on point in a way that does not feel like he's like doing intentionally. It just feels like it's Colin Powell.
Well, it's not just when he's talking, but it's also like the moment right after. That was the most important moment, and he just nails it perfectly.
And I think his performance getting overshadowed a bit, understandably so. He's in the film like for 10 minutes, so. But I think he's fantastic, and I really hope he does like more stuff like this, because he's really proven like. Yeah, he's great.
There's an argument he has with Don Rumsfeld from Steve Carell, where the two are sort of butting heads, and it just that scene was one of my favorites in the whole movie, honestly, because it was such a good, to me, an amalgamation of all of these characters kind of colliding, and it felt like something like it felt like you were really like a fly on the wall almost. And I know some people might disagree because of the Sam Rockwell characters in that too, and I don't know. I just think it perfectly captured everything this movie is trying to do, honestly.
I like that. I agree with that thought. So, what were you going to say when you were wrapping up?
That's right. Okay, so before we get into our final thoughts and our grades, we have a couple of listener reviews. We asked you on Twitter to give us your tweet-sized reviews of Vice. We want to hear from all of you Cinemaholics, not just us snobby film critic people. But, okay, so Jordan said, this was Jordan's review, satire paints with a broad brush. Nuance is lost to highlight the absurd. The catch: history is usually nuanced. I suspect many of the film's events happened, but also that the whole thing will be easily dismissed as hyperbole by those who need convincing. Pretty well made, though. B+. I adore this tweet-sized review, Jordan. This is fantastic.
That was good. Yeah, it was good.
I just thought it was so... This is from Jordan Robert McGill. His Twitter username is @JordanMcGill. Thank you so much for your tweet-sized review. I thought it was...
Did Adam McKay write that tweet?
It felt like it. Yes. Yeah. it had like a pentameter or something to it, but... And then we also heard from Callahan Carl, who said, this is a stone cold, mean masterpiece of a movie. So high praise. It's a nasty piece of work that works on every level imaginable. I'd like to hear more from Callahan Carl. I'm very curious what makes this movie a masterpiece. And he's not the only one. I've heard other people call this a political movie masterpiece. I definitely am not on that same level. But
it's not JFK.
Oh,
calm down here.
The Oliver. How many Oliver Stone's references are you going to get into this episode?
Not enough.
Okay. Well, okay. Will Ashton, you can fit one more thing, I guess, into your final thoughts, if you so please.
Did we? Well, I thought you wanted me to do another Oliver Stone point.
Unless you can fit it in somehow.
I was gonna say we never even talked about Oliver Stone's W.
Well, that's because to me that's not much of a movie. I really don't like that one.
Well, I mean, we're talking about Vice here, so all right. As it stands, Vice. I enjoyed the experience of watching it. Like I said, I think it could use some work. I think there's a stronger film in here that is butting its head, and it kind of feels like restricted in some ways by an edit of the film that isn't quite decisive enough for its own good. But like I said, the performances are strong. I like Adam McKay's voice, and I'd rather see more biopics like this that take chances, that kind of swing for the fences, as opposed to your typical kind of by the numbers, humdrum biopic, including one that I will talk about in a couple minutes. So yeah, I give it a B-. I think it's worth checking out. think it's worth joining the conversation to see it. I just don't think it's like A grade material that it could have been.
Yeah. Okay. So we're not that far off. I give this one a B. I do think that I give it a little bit more credit in some respects where I think it just didn't quite work for you, and that's quite all right. I really am sad to see a lot of people just outright dismiss this film. I've seen some people say that it's the worst of the year and things like that, which I just think is completely off base.
It's not. No,
it really isn't. I think that there's so much good in here, maybe surrounded by some bad things or some things that people might find bad, some scenes that just don't quite work, some character moments that feel really weird. There's one in particular with Alison Pill that just did not work for me at all, honestly, where it sort of half humanizes Dick Cheney, but in a way that rings like an account of what happened and not really what happened. I know that they sort of give the disclaimers like we're doing our best to tell what really happened, but
yeah, I'm wondering, wait, is that, I'm not sure if that's, I thought that's the one you were talking about that made you laugh a lot.
No, not even close. No, we mentioned it, and I don't want to give it away too much, but I mean, it was the midpoint of the film. That's
what I thought. Okay, so
yeah.
wait, so what scene are you talking about then?
I'm talking about before that, when Dick Cheney's daughter has the confession with yes, and
okay, I see. Okay, that makes sense. I get what you're going for now.
Yeah, that just to me felt like a portrait of what happened, and not really what happened, I guess. It was one of the few moments where I wasn't quite with where the film was going, but for the most part, I did follow this film all the way through, and I do have some issues with it, but with in regards to how it sort of balances the Amy Adams character and what it might be subtly implying about Dick Cheney's motivations. I think ultimately this is a film that is trying to reveal Dick Cheney to the world of like who he sort of is. And it offers a lot of different explanations. And one of the implied explanations is that he's sort of pushed into this initially by his wife. But I do think the film is also implying that it's him. It's who he is as a person. It just happens that his wife sort of feeds into this sort of political Machiavellian dynamic that ultimately has disastrous effects. I appreciate a lot of things in this movie. I like narrative documentaries that, like you said, take crazy chances and do different things without just ruining your life or ruining your cinematic life, I guess. And this is a little bit superior to something like American Animals, which is trying to do sort of the same thing. Ultimately, I think American Animals has a more cohesive third act in the way that it all comes together. But I thought this film was more enjoyable in how it gets there, I guess. So to me, it feels like American Animals is like half of the great film that this could have been, and this is the other half almost. That's kind of where I'm at the moment. But you totally disagree. Yeah,
no, I definitely preferred American Animals, I think, over this film.
I can't
overall.
Say that.
I mean, yeah, but no, I think I might have confused you. When I was talking about mid-credit scene earlier, I was talking about the one with the test audience, not the credits.
Okay, so we had a huge disconnect. Now, okay, we don't want to talk about this further because we don't want to spoil it for anybody who's going to watch, but we'll have this conversation off air for sure.
Okay, yeah, I was going to say, I apologize. I think I might confuse you because I forgot there was an actual literal mid-credit scene in the film, so apologies.
Well, all of that said, I think that this film will confuse people anyway, so it sort of fits that in this review people would get confused. But all right, that's Vice. I give it a B. You give it a B minus. I feel like this could have gone much worse. I was expecting us to be much more divided on this one, but it sounds like we're kind of on the same page for the most part.
We're more together than America right now, I guess.
So, okay, weird transition, but hey, it's the holidays. We're recording this episode in the aftermath of the Christmas celebration. It's about to be New Year's, which means we've had lots of downtime. And I know a lot of other Cinemaholics listening have had some time to spend with family. Maybe you've had a chance to celebrate your own particular holiday and you've had some time off work. Hopefully you have. Now, I personally continued my annual tradition. I do this every year where I use my personal downtime and my hours of holiday air travel to catch up on all the films that have come out in a given year. And of course, there are plenty of 2018 films that I've wanted to see lately that I haven't had a chance to. And I've spent I've spent 12 hours or something like that on an airplane over just the last week. And I spent a lot of those hours watching films for all of you listening. Not really. So films just put me at ease on a plane, I guess. It's my go-to thing, and it just happens that it benefits Cinemaholics that I can also talk about them in spots. Now, we're not going to talk about a lot of these films, and I'm a little sad about a couple of them. Honestly, I really want to talk about, first of all, Life Itself. That is a film that we have both seen. And I hope that we can find a way to sneak it into our top 10 episode next week. Not that it is a top 10 for either of us, but I am so... This movie provoked something out of me, Will Ashton. But anyway, that movie's on Amazon, and it's something. So then there's also Shirkers, which I watched twice because I absolutely adore this documentary. If you have a Netflix account and you're wondering to yourself, hey, I didn't watch that many movies in 2018, or hey, what's my favorite documentary of the year? I'm not sure. Please watch Shirkers. If you love film, if you want to make a film someday, or if you just have any passion for the cinema, Shirkers is your film. It is so great. I absolutely love it. Have you seen it yet, Will?
No, I'm going to figure out what movie to watch after we record, because I'm trying to catch up on some stuff, and that's on my list, as well as Minding the Gap.
I hope
and a
it's
couple others.
Shirkers and Minding the Gap. I love that movie as well. I hope both of those are high up on your list. They're great 2018 documentaries. And then also I saw The Writer, which,
The Writer.
Yes, Rider.
I thought you said The Writer.
No. So there's that as well. I was able to see that on Stars through Amazon. Oh, it's a great film. I think it's probably in my top 25 of the year.
Wow.
Yeah, maybe top 20.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. I've heard it's definitely up there. And
really good.
That's another one I might watch that tonight. I don't know. I'm figuring it out.
Yeah. Shirkers, that might be top 15, top 10. So we'll see. But Never Going Back, I also saw, that's like that stoner comedy from A24.
Oh, yeah. I heard that was good. Yeah.
That's probably my favorite guilty pleasure of the year. It's not a great film, but it really is. It really, it's a guilty pleasure kind of movie. It sort of feeds off of some of the tropes and cliches of stoner comedies that kind of hold it back from being like a legitimately fantastic film or something like that. But this is a highly enjoyable stoner comedy, honestly. And Kyle Mooney is in it, who you and I both have had a lot of comedic laughs over his work. But the two main actresses in this one, Camilla Maroney and Maya Mitchell, are just probably my favorite comedic duo of the year. It's a very tight contest, honestly. They've got to be in my top 5 of like just duos comedically in the past 12 months, honestly. And then the last one was Bird Box, which I managed to catch, which we're about to review. But before that, I should mention I did binge most of the 3rd season of Man in the High Castle on Amazon Prime Video. Yeah. I still love this show, despite all of the pain it has put me through, especially it had a huge gap between seasons. And I know a lot of my fellow Game of Thrones fans can relate.
Yeah, I thought it got canceled.
I did too. Honestly, I wasn't expecting season 3, and then it happened. So I was excited about that. But yeah. So all in all, Will Ashton, it has been a great week for me at the movies. I've seen a lot of things that I have been meaning to see, although Mandy and Revenge and Cold War, I think, and Stan and Ollie. Those are like the 4 films that I won't be able to see before our top 10 of the year, unfortunately. But I'm going to try to see at least 2 of them. I'm going to try over the next week. It's a very chaotic time this following week. Yeah.
Well, I'm very, very curious to hear what you think of Mandy, but I'm also very nervous.
Yeah.
Given your opinions on some of the films that I hold in high esteem this year.
I think Suspiria is probably the chief culprit in that one, but anyway.
More than Vox Lux?
Well, yeah, good point there too.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because like Suspiria, you're just like, I didn't like it, and I'm like, okay.
I thought Suspiria was
Vox Lux, I was gonna say, Vox Lux, you used profanity when I told you what I thought of the film. So I think there's a stark difference in the opinions that we've had for those films.
That is true. So, but Will Ashton, before we move on to our review of Bird Box, how was your holiday film watching? Did anything stand out for you? Did you catch anything?
A little bit. I actually did more reading than watching film, just because I was traveling a lot. But yeah, I watched a couple things I really enjoyed. I finally got a chance to see Roma in theaters. I barely caught it, just like maybe the last showing in theaters in the area, maybe the last day, I forget.
Still though, that's great to hear.
Yeah, it was a skin of my teeth viewing, but I'm very glad I got a chance to see it in theaters. I thought it was very good. All the praise is well deserved. I mean, you said it'll probably win Best Director, and I can totally see it. There are at least 2 scenes in the film where I'm like when you see a really well directed film, you're like, okay, like it's really well done, but you could kind of have an idea of how they shot something.
Mm-hmm.
There are two sequences here that are like touch of evil. Like, I don't know how they did this.
Right. Yeah.
Good. Like,
the timing is just unbelievable.
Right. I just like, especially because they at least one of them involves very young children. Like, I don't know. Like, I would love to pick Alfonso Cuarón's brain and figure out like, how did you do this in like one take? I don't know how he did it. So great film. I'm sure a lot of people have already seen it by now before me, but totally in my consideration for the year's best films. Should I talk about Welcome to Marwen by now?
Well, we were going to bring that up a little later because you did a whole special thing about it. So actually, we'll get to that. We'll get to that actually. Let's just get into Bird Box because we're running lowish on time.
I was going to say, other than that, I mean, a couple weeks ago I saw Green Book, but I told you about. I don't know if I should talk about it in the air or not.
Well, what was your drive-through grade on Green Book?
Because it's a car. I agree with all your criticisms. I think everything you said was on point. Although I took contention that you called Viggo Mortensen's character Tony the Lip when he makes a point, very apparently, to say that his name is Tony Lip. But other than that, I think you're on point. My only difference is that I found the film entertaining and kind of funny, but I feel begrudgingly about that because I feel like I'm kind of tricked into liking the film in a way. Like I was entertained in spite of everything that I found obnoxious and abhorring about it. But I think I gave it it was somewhere between a B- and a C+, like somewhere between there. I think I ended up with a B- just because like I got entertainment value out of it. And I think the performances are strong enough to sail me through the film. But I would not say that deserves Best Picture or its nomination that I'll likely get, or Best Director, or whatever it's going to get. Besides the Marshall Ali nomination that will probably happen. But so let's talk about Bird Box.
Yeah, let's get into it. I'm very curious. I have no idea how this one's going to go, but okay, let's finally get to our review of Bird Box. This is a new survival apocalyptic / post-apocalyptic thriller. It just dropped on Netflix over the holidays. Quite a bit of buzz and maybe some scrutiny, depending on your own personal social media bubble. I'm really curious how people are talking about this one outside of my own circles, because I've seen so many different takes on it at this point, and it's only been a few days. But anyway, it follows the story of a woman played by Sandra Bullock, who is trying to keep her 2 children safe from a vaguely dangerous presence that they can't look at for some mysterious reason. The obvious comparison for this movie is that it's basically A Quiet Place, but the deadly sense is now sight instead of sound. This is not a derivative film. They made it before A Quiet Place. It's just sort of coincidental that these two films are coming out so close to each other and share a lot of the same DNA, but I don't want anyone to think that Bird Box is some sort of ripoff. It doesn't appear to be so. So here is a short clip from the trailer.
Where are you? Please don't tell your Joe. Please don't take my children! How have you been feeling? Have you been sleeping any better?
Oh, rough. Then again, I never slept well before this condition.
Condition? It's called pregnancy. It's okay to say it out loud. Something's happened.
Can you just please drive?
Did you see something?
Come inside!
That is from the trailer for Bird Box, which was directed by Suzanne Bier and is based on a novel of the same name by Josh Malerman. Okay, so Suzanne Bier, she's a Danish-German filmmaker. She made one of my favorite foreign films from the early 2000s, which was Brothers. You may recall the kind of strange American remake that came out, maybe, I don't want to say 7 years ago, something like that.
Yeah,
it was also called Brothers.
I I kind of like the movie, but there are two key scenes I remember very vividly about that film.
I do not dislike that movie, honestly. I watched it in the theater, and I would watch it again. That's the one with Natalie Portman, Tobey Maguire, Jake Gyllenhaal.
Yeah.
But yeah, she also directed the miniseries The Night Manager with Tom Hiddleston.
Oh, yeah.
We have cited on this show so many times, 3 or 4 times. I've never seen it, but Will, you have brought it up independently, and then somebody else has brought it up. I think it was Alicia Grauso on one of our last calls.
Yeah, I thought it was. I watched 3 episodes. I think it was one of those shows. Like I was kind of into it. I don't know if I ever loved it, and then I just never. I missed like a week, and then I never caught up. But it has some strong moments.
Yeah. Well, the screenplay for Bird Box is from Eric Heiserer. He's probably best known for doing the screenplay for Arrival, which almost won him an Oscar. He got a nomination. So Will Ashton, this cast, it almost feels like a practical joke because of how great it is.
Yeah, that one scene, like I was just like, how many character actors can you shove into this scene?
So we mentioned Sandra Bullock. She's the main lead, but we also have Trevante Rhodes, of course, from Moonlight. He was also in The Predator earlier this year. There's John Malkovich and Jackie Weaver. No introduction needed, of course. Rosa Salazar, who I was surprised to see her. I mean, we've seen her in 2 of the Maze Runner movies. She's going to be in the next, that Alita Battle Angel one.
Yep.
So I was surprised to see her, honestly. And then Danielle McDonald from Patty Cakes, kind of an indie sleeper hit from last year.
And Dumplin'.
And Dumplin'. Yeah, I haven't seen that one yet, but
neither have I. That's another one I'm debating whether I should watch tonight.
I've heard middling things, but nothing.
It's Dolly Parton, so I'm going to see it.
Yeah, that's right. You know, you don't skip Dolly Parton, but yeah.
You don't even mess with Dolly Parton, no.
Yep. Lil Rel Howery from Get Out is in this one. Tom Hollander, Colson Baker, B.D. Wong for some reason is in this, and Sarah Paulson. I mean, there are so many people in this. I thought this film had just as many surprise cameos as Vice, which is saying something. So we cannot say that this film cuts any corners on the creative talent involved, from director to screenwriters to the cast. It's all pretty much the best that you could sort of expect for the subject matter. But Will, what did you think of Bird Box?
Well, I'll say you brought up A Quiet Place, and there are a couple other films that came to mind while I was watching the film of various qualities. Let's see, there was The Happening. I think it's pretty apparent as far as like the suicide angle of the film. Let's see what else. There was Blindness, that 2008 film with Julianne Moore.
Yeah.
Trying to think what the other ones were. I'm blanking on them right now. I feel bad. Quiet Place and oh well. Anyway, so yeah, I heard the hype. The main reason I checked out the film was because of all the talk on Twitter. Because I mean, I think people like this movie. It seems like people like it, but
do they?
There seems
okay. I mean, I've seen some, yeah, some like,
but there's some controversy because I guess Netflix was creating meme accounts to drum up attention for the film. Did you hear about that?
I heard about it, but I haven't seen any of those meme accounts, and so I don't really have a grasp of what they did, honestly.
Yeah, I don't know, honestly. But in any case, there was a lot of chatter about the film, both good and bad, and I really didn't know what to expect, but I kind of figured it would be better than this, given how much talk was in the film, because I really given how much buzz was in the film, I'm kind of surprised that there's really that much to talk about. Because it just feels like, in a way, it made me appreciate A Quiet Place more. Because I think it does a lot of the things I was afraid A Quiet Place was going to do. It's based on a book. I forget who wrote the actual book. You probably said that at the
Josh
top.
Mallerman, yeah, I mentioned
There you go, yeah. And it feels very much like, the other movie I was thinking was The Mist. There you go. It feels very much like they have to explain everything in a way that A Quiet Place was able to pretty skillfully just let the audience figure it out for themselves, besides some clunky foreshadowing in the background and stuff like that. But yeah, it's very lumbersome in its pacing. The acting, even from really well talented people, is mixed at best. And I just don't think it's well written. Like, it feels very generic. The dialogue at times can be pretty painfully bad. It's not well shot in certain key scenes, but then there'll be other scenes that are well shot, and it made me wonder, are there 2 directors and DPs involved with this film? Because the stuff with the river is pretty stylish and seems like it's inspired, And then you'll get the stuff with like the pre or like the like early stuff, the like flashbacks that feel like a NBC pilot of some kind, like a like early episode into like some whatever that apocalypse show that they had for a while. But yeah, it's a frustrating film because like I guess you could do something cool with it, but at the same time it just seems very silly to me. What do you think, John?
Well, I do want to mention the cinematography. I was surprised to see that this is Salvatore Totino, who is probably best known. He's worked a lot with Ron Howard. He did, my gosh, Da Vinci Code, Cinderella Man.
Did he do Rush?
No, he didn't do Rush, but he did Angels and Demons, the sequel to Da Vinci Code. He did Frost Nixon. He did The Dilemma. Yeah, he did a lot of Ron Howard films. And then he took a break from his films, and then I think the last film, well, no, he did do Inferno, the last Da Vinci Code one. But then I think, yes, I didn't see it, but I heard it was not great.
It's very forgettable.
Yeah. But his most recent film was Spider-Man Homecoming, which I liked the cinematography in that film, and I think that it's just sort of surprising. Yeah, well, it's surprising to see him go from that to this, and it makes me very curious about his next film. I know he's doing one with David Ayer. That David Ayer, I have very mixed feelings on as a director, honestly, and it's curious because he did Bright, the film that was from last year, Suicide Squad as well. Yeah. Well, and then David Ayer, also a Netflix film. And I'm wondering a little bit about how cinematography is being financed through Netflix, and Bird Box is kind of making me wonder a little bit about the financial potential of Netflix and how it's sort of putting those dollars into these films, because this to me reeks of a film that's sort of limited by everything except for whose name is on it. Because again, you have so many people attached to this. Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross did the music. Will Ashton, I cannot tell you a single moment where the music worked for me, which is just bizarre.
Feels like autopilot.
Yeah. Yeah, from the director to the cast to the screenplay, there's something that just completely got lost here. And I'm curious, and I'm a little upset in a way, because this should be one of the better movies of the year. It should be one of the top 10 Netflix films of the year, and it's not even close. I mean, there are other Netflix films that were nowhere near as ambitious as this one in terms of who was behind it, and yet this is the one that feels just clumsy and misguided in a way. And it's not terrible. I think I like it maybe a little bit more than you did, but I think my main issue with this one is that it has zero tension whatsoever. Because of the way that these scenes are individually pieced together, you know basically which characters are going to live, which ones are going to die, and there's a way to do that in the classic Hitchcockian way of like, okay, you know the person's going to die, so that's where the tension comes in. It's like, okay, the bomb's under the table, you know the danger is going to happen, and then the tension is how it's going to happen. But there's something about the way that they structure the sort of present day scenes with Sandra Bullock and these two children that robs the film of all of this tension. It's not even trying to build up throughout the rest of it, because it's half, like I said, half apocalyptic story where you're seeing how all of this dangerous stuff happened, and then you're seeing the aftermath. And I don't think that works narratively here. Maybe it worked in the novel, and I'm not sure how the novel does it, but I don't know. Do you agree?
Yeah, it's like I said, I mean, it feels like this could have really worked in a book where like you kind of get in the mindset of the characters, but like watching them like just with blindfolds, like with their arms out, just looks super silly. But that's all execution. Like I said, like Quiet Place could have been a very silly film that we are all laughing at, but I think the fact that John Krasinski made a film that riveted a lot of people is a great credit to him as an early director. But yeah, just something about that, and the characters just constantly do really dumb things.
They really do.
And like, I'm not one of those people, like I know a lot of people like the like this is a horror film or it's more of a thriller.
I'd say it's more of a thriller, but with horror subgenre elements.
Yeah, like it just I'm not usually one to like yell at characters being dumb in movies, but like every character in this, well, almost every character in this movie does something like inexplicably really dumb, and like I can't really side with you because it's like, well, why'd you do that?
Yeah.
And also like I'm sorry, what?
I was just going to mention another movie this one made me think of was The Discovery, another Netflix film, in sort of the way that it depicts the end of the world, but I'm not saying that in a good way.
Okay, well I like Discovery. A little more than you did at least, but yeah, I also found it weird that like I couldn't tell if the super entity had different powers or if it was like adapting, because there was like times where like it made people want to just kill themselves, and then other times like they're on a murderous rampage and like they're just trying to kill everyone in sight. And I wasn't like, is that an adaptation? Like they're evolving, or is that like another power they can do?
Well, this isn't a movie. It's not a movie that's very interested in the rules of how all of this works. It really is only sort of interested in how the rules affect the characters, which I can sort of get on board with, of let's spend less time prioritizing the nooks and crannies of how everything works. But then at the same time, you don't have a lot of moments where the characters are coming up with solutions or being creative and finding, different ways to survive.
Like one scene of that, like basically.
Maybe. Yeah. And then there's another one where it all goes horribly wrong. And then, I think that the film especially doesn't nail the landing, because throughout this whole thing, you're sort of led to really follow the through line of Sandra Bullock's character. And okay, how is she going to get through everything? And what is her moment? What is her mea culpa here? And it all just ends with a thud to me. It has like a Book of Eli-esque ending.
Same writer, I believe, right?
Did he do Book of Eli as well on top of Arrival?
Sure, yeah. I'm pretty sure, yeah.
That's kind of fascinating, actually.
Let me look it up. Well, we keep talking. I'll look it up.
It's Eric Heiser, and I know Book of Eli also based on a graphic novel, which is interesting because Arrival was based on a short story. Now, I don't know if that's fully true, because I want to say the Book of Eli was written by someone else, but because I don't know. But if it was, I'd be very curious to find out just
you're right,
how all that went. Okay, it wasn't him.
But he did Lights Out, which had a terrible ending as well.
I didn't see Lights Out. I know he did like either Nightmare on Elm Street, or he did a couple like horror films like in the early 2010s. Like
the Thing prequel?
The Thing, yeah. He did like a Final Destination or something like that.
Yeah. The good one. One of the better ones, actually. 5.
Yeah, I thought Arrival was like, okay, this is this guy really just putting it out, like just really getting in there. And I'm actually... it's funny because this movie came out around the same time that Your Name was announced, or not announced, but there's more news coming out that Heiser is working on the live action remake of Your Name, and that's been getting a lot of controversy lately. Well, I don't think you saw that one, the anime.
No, I saw Your Name. Yeah,
you saw it? No. Okay.
Yeah,
why did I think you
didn't? The switching movie? Yeah, I saw that.
Maybe I'm thinking of another anime that I saw that you didn't, from a couple of years ago, which is weird. But anyway, Your Name, a film that I actually really like, and I don't want there to be any westernized remake of whatsoever. I think it's just a terrible idea, but hopefully it turns out okay. Regardless, I don't know where I was going with that. My main thing is that I just think that Bird Box is just kind of a bird bore. I don't know. I was pretty bored throughout it. I checked out. I thought that it was just generic Walking Dead material. And I'm glad you brought up Quiet Place, because I always really liked Quiet Place. And I think that, you said it made you appreciate Quiet Place a little bit more. For me, I think it sort of, for me, I felt more vindicated in liking that film so unabashedly. I think there was a little bit of backlash to Quiet Place of like, it's not a really good film. It's just sort of, cookie cutter. And I thought I disagreed with those takes. I thought that Quiet Place genuinely was doing something really interesting, and it was handling this material in creative ways that really made you feel a connection to what's happening on screen in a way that Bird Box just doesn't, and bums me out. But this isn't a very good one. I give it probably a C minus, probably more of about a C, because I don't know. It's not that it's terrible or anything. Again, there isn't anything remarkable about it, I guess.
Yeah, I agree. Like even the stuff that's like okay or pretty good is like nothing really worth celebrating. But like you, I was kind of like I didn't like the beginning. I even thought like Sarah Paulson's character or her acting was kind of lacking, which is surprising because I mean, rarely do you ever get a performance from Sarah Paulson that's lacking.
Right.
But like there's a driving scene where they're like cracking jokes about the Four Horsemen. It's like no one does this at this time.
And the exposition with her and Sandra Bullock was so clunky, and it was
Right,
just a
yeah.
weird
I
use
blame
of
it-
this actor.
To be clear, I blame it mostly on the script and the direction. I think she's
Sure.
fantastic. But yeah, I was okay with like as it was going on. I was kind of getting a little more into it. I think just based more on like the character actors just kind of getting a chance to act more. But then when we get to the end of the film, that was when I was just like, oh, okay,
Right.
this is what we've been leading up to. Forget about it. C minus.
Right. Yeah.
I've
I think
seen
that's really
better.
it. Yeah. Like
That's
once,
my-
Will,
Yeah,
you didn't have to go there.
I did.
So what you're saying is Bird Box is not out of sight.
Nope.
Okay. Well, that's Bird Box. I honestly, I don't have much else to add. It really is the sort of film that I kind of knew that it wasn't leading up to anything great. And then when it didn't, I just sort of was like, well, yeah, that's kind of what I expected, honestly. So
Yeah. But I
Kind of a
thought
shame.
at least end. Like, I expected at least a better ending than that. Like, just that was such a hokey Hollywood written ending
Right.
that, like, I don't know if that's how the book ends, but I mean, just a weak sauce ending.
yeah, well, Netflix is definitely not listening to us on this one. They don't need to, because according to Netflix, this is one of their best performing films ever. I think it was down. They said it was viewed individually by something like 45 million different accounts, Netflix accounts.
They said like a third of their paying audience saw it,
Yeah.
which seems hard to believe, but whatever.
Yeah, and I'm not a fan of how this film portrays a lot of things. Like, I know there's been some conversation about how it depicts mental illness and sort of like how suicide and people who are mental health, you know, because there is like a subplot in this sort of where people who are mentally ill sort of become like in league with the dark evil forces. And
Oh yeah. Ugh.
that was very weird. And I do think that was part of the book. And there's something about the way that it was really revealed on screen that just really just left me wondering what they could have done to like not do that, because it just doesn't work to me. And I think it's pretty offensive. But yeah, at the moment, the film, I believe, has around a 67% last I checked on Rotten Tomatoes. So pretty mixed, but definitely not a big failure or anything. I think audiences are connecting with it on some level. It's kind of like an average turn your brain off kind of thriller film. And that's not too surprising in my opinion. I think that's probably sounds about right, honestly. So that is Bird Box. You can watch it on Netflix now if you dare. I highly recommend many other things instead if you can.
Yeah.
All right. Well, before we get into our next review, Will Ashton, we teased this earlier, but you did something kind of special regarding Welcome to Marwen, which is a new Robert Zemeckis film with Steve Carell. For those listening who haven't seen this episode on their podcast feeds, what is it?
What's Welcome to Marwen?
Well, what is this episode that you did?
Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, we did a last call. Matt Serafini and I. Matt Serafini is my co-host on A Ogre to Its Ogre. Similar to what we did last year with Bright and Downsizing, we broke down what I would say is arguably the weirdest movie of 2018, which is Robert Zemeckis' Welcome to Marwen, which is a narrative adaptation of the 2010 documentary Marwenqual, which I would recommend. As far as Welcome to Marwen, I would not recommend that film unless you want something that is completely absurdist, which is fair. I can understand if you want to see something that is just completely, totally ill-advised. But as I said on the show, I think it's a very bad film by a truly great filmmaker. And I think it's the type of bad film only a great filmmaker can make. So I hope you listen to the episode and either get encouraged or discouraged to enter Marwen.
All right. Yeah.
And should I also plug that season 2 of A Ogre to Its Ogre is done and finished, and you can listen to our season finale?
Always hustling, Will Ashton. All right. I dig it. Do it.
Yeah. So we did our season 2 finale. That's also available. We wrapped the season with a, I guess, loose adaptation of How the Grinch Stole Christmas. Our episode is called How the Cat in the Hat Stole Grinchmas. I think it turned out really fun. I hope people check it out. And should I tell them what season 3 is going to be about, or keep that a surprise?
That's up to you, Will Ashton. You're the showrunner.
I'll keep it a surprise for now.
All
but
right.
yeah, I hope people check out season 2 and our episode, our special last call on Welcome to Marwin.
We'll be sure to let all of you Cinemaholics listeners know what season 3 is going to be about on a later date, so that you can check it out and enjoy the insanity that is It Ain't Ogre Till It's Ogre. I think you're going to be glad you did. I'm really appreciative for Matt Serafini for stepping up and helping us out with so many last calls this month, and our Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse review from a couple weeks back.
Sure.
So he's been a great help, and we really appreciate it. And I just listened to the Welcome to Marwin conversation. It's a blast. I thought that you guys had a great time, and maybe not watching the movie, but talking about it at least. You can definitely tell. So, okay, for our next review, so you may remember Barry Jenkins. He did the 2016 Best Picture Oscar winner at the last second, Moonlight. Now, it's 2 years after his sophomore triumph, because I believe that was his second film. Am I right about that?
Moonlight, yes.
Yeah. So Jenkins returns with his next awards contender, If Beale Street Could Talk. It's based on the 1974 novel of the same name by James Baldwin, who I consider one of the strongest writers and activists of the 20th century. If you haven't had a chance, I highly recommend seeking out the documentary I Am Not Your Negro, which came out a couple years ago. It's based on some of Baldwin's ruminations during the civil rights era in the 1960s. It's narrated by Samuel Jackson. It is one of my favorite movies of 2016. I think that was in my top 5, top 10 of the whole year. It's fantastic. So
good film.
His new film, Barry Jenkins that is called If Beale Street Could Talk. It's very much a love story through and through, but one unlike any you've probably seen before. It's really different. It centers around a young couple in 1970s New York navigating the racism of the justice system as they bring a new life into the world. So one half of the couple, Fonnie, is facing serious jail time to an alleged crime, while his pregnant girlfriend, Tish, works aggressively to help him get his trial and clear his name. Amidst all of this drama, Tish and her family have to contend with Fonnie's religious family, which sees the baby as the product of something wrong and sinful. Here's a clip for If Beale Street Could Talk.
That child is coming. It's your grandchild. I don't understand you. It's your grandchild. What difference does it make how he gets here? The child ain't got nothing to do with that. Ain't none of us got nothing to do with that. That child. That child. That child. That child. That child.
All right, that was from If Beale Street Could Talk. You heard Regina King there in that audio portraying the role of Tish's mother. So if she does not secure an Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actress, I officially redeclare the Oscars as pointless. Joking aside, this is a fantastic cast, and I really do hope that Regina King gets some attention for this. And I think this film is going to get a lot of attention for a lot of different awards on top of Best Supporting Actress, honestly. In this film, you have Kiki Lane starring as Tish, Stefan James as her fiancée Fonnie, along with Tiona Paris, Regina King, as I mentioned, Coleman Domingo, Brian Tyree Henry, Dave Franco, Ed Skrein, Michael Beach, Finn Whitrock, Anu Ellis, Diego Luna, Pedro Pascal, and Emily Rios. Now, Will Ashton, you haven't had a chance to see this yet, so we may be talking about this film on a later date in more detail. I don't want to go into too much, but I do want to talk about this film because it is the end of the year. I didn't want to wait because I know some people are considering seeing this in limited release. It's in select theaters around the country at the moment, and I think it's going to be hitting your neck of the woods probably in the coming weeks, correct?
Hopefully, yeah. From what I've been told, it is coming close to mid-January, but I'm hoping there's a screening or something before that because I'm very, very excited to check this one out.
I think that you should be. I absolutely adore this film. It is unlike anything that I have ever seen from a filmmaker because, a lot of films that do stories about love and a lot of movies that do stories about racism, they very rarely put the things together in a way that really makes you understand what people have to lose. Like, when two people don't get together, what is the thing that they lose? What is the thing that gets taken away from them by a society? And it's really hard to adapt James Baldwin. His writing is so specific and so unique. And Will, I know that I think you finished the book, If Beale Street Could Talk. Right,
Great book. One of my favorite reads of the year.
It's so good. I haven't finished it yet, but I've been pouring through it since holiday travel. That was one of the things that I was doing on the plane. And I'm glad I did, because it really lends insight into what a great filmmaker Barry Jenkins is, because what he's done here is he's taken a very specific voice, James Baldwin's voice, which is a novel. It's narrative. It messes with timelines a little bit, but it's sort of straightforward, at least in the parts that I've been going through. And it translates a novel not to a screenplay in the very literal sense, but to poetry. Like, this film is poetry filmmaking. And it's the perfect way, I think, to really evoke what James Baldwin was trying to do with his writing. And I on that level alone, this film, I think, is so important and so fascinating. This is one of those films that I think is going to be dissected and analyzed, probably overanalyzed for years to come, on the way that it uses language outside of just normal dialogue to tell its story. And its story is very simple. I mean, the story is, as I mentioned, Tish is just trying to get this guy out of jail because she just wants to be with him. She has all of these factors to contend with: the justice system, as I mentioned, the family's not getting along. All of these things get in their way of being happy. And you can convey that in a lot of ways. You can convey it through dialogue and Oscar-worthy yelling matches and things like that. But this film uses language in every sense. It uses taste. It uses color, not just sight, but color. Like, what this film does with color is so unlike what other films do. It almost makes every other film that came out this year feel sort of limited in its own canvas. And there are so many filmmaking techniques in here that, it reminds me of Roma, because Roma is a movie that has sort of a similar premise, where you have a marginalized woman who becomes pregnant and just sort of has to deal with the man not being there, and then how that affects her future. And Roma is so great because of all the directorial decisions and how it, is experimental filmmaking. And honestly, this film is better than Roma. I think that this film, I really love Roma. I think that's a fantastic film. I love what Alfonso Cuarón did there, but I think Barry Jenkins is doing something similar, but also perfectly different in a way that I think is more satisfying, honestly. And I think that people are going to connect with more. And I don't want to give away a lot of the techniques that he uses here, but there are two things that I'll call out. One is that, oh my word, Barry Jenkins doesn't just film things in a different way for the sake of it. He does it in a way to create emotion. And one specific thing that he does in this film a lot is that he does a lot of close-up shots where you're in the character's face and the character is looking right at you. And a lot of films that do this, it can feel like you're breaking the fourth wall. But what this film masterfully does is it makes you realize that you are seeing this character through the eyes of another character, and then their reaction to seeing you. And it's such a beautiful thing on top of everything else that the canvas of this movie is putting together, where yellow, for example, is such a huge color in this movie. It's so loaded with symbolism and motif and just this general sense that you get whenever you see it. The film has you in its hands, and it's really guiding you along what is in these characters' heads without telling you. And to me, that is filmmaking at its best. That is filmmaking at just working on every level. Now, unfortunately, I can't say that this is better than Moonlight, weirdly enough. I know that I'm praising it a lot. This film is so great in so many different ways. It really is like a portrait instead of a film. Like, a portrait, for example, you see like a couple in a portrait, it does feel like everything is sort of put together, unlike a painting, if that makes any sense. Like a painting, you sort of create the colors yourself. Here, it feels like Jenkins is putting all the pieces in place and letting you run with it. And on that level, it works. My only thing with this movie is that it does meander a little too much here and there. And maybe I just need to see it again. But there's something about the way that it guides its second act into the third act that made me feel like something was sort of missing. And it's still a better film than Roma, and I'm kind of nitpicking it for some structural choices. And the other nitpick that I will say is that there is a section of this movie that takes place in Puerto Rico, obviously very personal for me. And, you know, as a Puerto Rican, there were some things that I took away from this that felt like it was commoditizing or commodit. I don't know if that's a good verb, but it was kind of making a commodity out of Puerto Rican culture. And in some ways that sort of rubbed me the wrong way. And I don't think that that's something to necessarily downgrade the film over. I just think it's just sort of a one brush among many. And it didn't disrupt the film all that much for me, but it was something that I sort of called out as maybe because it was so authentic in its own immersive Black world, because this is a world inhabited by living, breathing Black characters who are so human and so complete and multidimensional. So that when it took us to Puerto Rico, there was something about it that I was like, well, I mean, why can't you do the same thing for Puerto Rican culture? And I guess I just I felt like I was left wanting there. And I'm not sure if that's totally fair. And a big reason for that is Pedro Pascal, I think, is really miscast here. He has a very small role. I don't know why he's in this film. And he just does not evoke to me like what that character was written as, honestly. So that was something that kind of got in my way. But all in all, Will, I can't wait for you to see this one because I'm in love with it. I'm in love with the characters. I'm in love with how the story resolves and where it goes. And I really hope that it lives up to you in terms of how the book pans out, because I haven't finished the book, so I'm not sure how different it is. But one thing I'll say, for example, is that it spends way, way less time on the backstory of Tish and Fonny, like how, you know, they got to know each other as kids. It doesn't spend as much time with that. It does not prioritize the main goal of these characters. Like, these characters are trying to get Fonny out of jail, right? And they make a point of it to say, you know, in any other movie, it's like, well, if we just get the money, we can do this. If we just get him out of jail, we can do this. And this is a movie that's a bit more outside of that box of, because most movies judge success and character resolution by, we wanted the thing, we got the thing. And this is not that movie. And I absolutely love that. It is on par with Moonlight in that way, because Moonlight is such a just totally original breakthrough of a movie in everything that it does. I think that ultimately it's more original, and it's a little bit, I mean, you can't say that it's more original in the sense that it's not adapted from a novel in the same way, but it just has its own style and distinct sort of filmmaking into it that I set Moonlight apart from this one, and they're so different that it almost feels a little unfair to judge their filmography in this way. But all of that said, I appreciate both films. I love both films. And I'm really glad that Barry Jenkins followed Moonlight up with this, because it really is showing the fact that he is easily one of our most promising directors, and he should be allowed to make whatever film he is passionate about, because clearly he knows what he's doing, and he knows empathy in a way that is savant-like. Like, he really understands how to get people to get into other people's heads. And that could be something that could be easily used for evil. And fortunately, he used it for good. He's putting out great art in the world. And I highly recommend If Beale Street Could Talk. I was between an A- and an A. I'm still processing this movie because those nitpicks are getting in my way and they're keeping me from that A. I hope this becomes an A over the next couple of weeks, but at the moment I'm at a super high A-. This is in my top 10 of the year, so that's a hint. You listen to us for this long, so you get that if you wanted to put in your submissions. But yeah, I don't know where it lands exactly, but it definitely is it's easily one of the best films of the year. I could easily see it win Best Picture. Obviously, it'll get the nomination, and I would be very happy to see it win. And that is If Beale Street Could Talk.
Nice.
Oh, boy. That was a lot to get through, Will. I feel emotionally drained, almost as emotionally drained as I was watching the movie. But, yeah. Can't wait for you to see it.
Yeah, I can't wait to see it as well.
Okay, finish this out, Will Ashton. You saw a film that I haven't had a chance to see this one, On the Basis of Sex. This is the new Ruth Bader Ginsburg movie. Tell us all about it.
Yeah, it's the biopic, like you said, on Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Specifically, what's that trial called? Do you remember?
What was the trial itself called? That,
yeah.
like, from the title of the movie?
Right.
I don't remember. I did watch RBG, and I know that they said it at some point.
Yeah. I should admit up front, I saw this movie about a month and a half ago.
That's right.
So
it's been a minute.
It's not completely fresh on my mind. But yeah, so I'll just say the general broad scheme of it. It's Felicity Jones, right? I was going to say Felicity Hoffman. Yeah. Felicity Jones playing Ruth Bader Ginsburg. It's just kind of her, I guess, uprising in a way. You kind of see her early years with her husband, played by Armie Hammer, kind of her journey to being respected and doing what might honestly be her most prolific court battle. And it's a worthwhile story, and I think it was told really well in the documentary RBG that you were referring to. And I thought it was not very well done in this film. And I don't say that. I don't want to say that, at least. I mean, I really wanted this movie to be very good. I wanted it to be the portrait of Ruth Bader Ginsburg that we deserve, a political figure that is championed, I think, rightfully. But I think this film is so banal and paint by numbers and basic and cookie cutter in its execution that I really have a hard time championing the film itself. I certainly enjoy the ambitions. I think what it's trying to do is good. I think that everyone involved wanted to respect the figure, and I think they wanted to make a film that is worthy of Ruth Bader Ginsburg's accomplishment in America. But I just think the film itself at best is fine. Like, I can't really even think of that many moments in the film where I was super captivated. It felt very much like I was just watching a biopic. Like, I'd never felt immersed into the film in the way that I think I should. And the performances even aren't like spectacular. I felt like Felicity Jones did fine. I thought Armie Hammer was fine. They're not bad, but their performances. And I definitely didn't get the sense that I was really watching them become these iconic figures. And I think the movie is winning a lot of people over, and I can certainly understand why. I think it's a respectful film as far as how it portrays what it's portraying, but I just couldn't get into it because I just found it to be a not great film about a great person. And I don't take any joy in saying that. I wanted to be in love with the film. I even wanted just to like the film, but for me, it's a C, and I don't really have much more to say about it than that.
Yeah. Is it true that Kesha did a song for this movie?
I think so. They say that in the trailer.
Oh, does it not play during the movie? Because that would have been...
I think it plays during the credits. I don't know. This movie has pretty much escaped my memory bank.
Yeah.
So I apologize, but I mean, it is what it is. Like, I think it hits its mark for a lot of people. I think it's going to do well. I think, but I do think it's disadvantaged severely by coming out the same year as RPG, which did basically the same thing, but much better and much more rich. It did richer, I felt, and I felt much more moved, inspired by that film than I did here, where it felt just kind of hokey.
Yeah, there was something that I came across where some people were reacting to this film, and there was a writer, I think it might have been for BuzzFeed, who was talking about how she felt like these films were sort of like finding like a weird marketing or marketization of feminism by turning RBG into this idol, like kind of like a pagan idol of feminism, sort of lacking of the substance that comes along with that. And that this new film, On the Basis of Sex, sort of just feels like a pandering sort of like nothing, and not nothing of a film, but just something that
it's not nothing. No.
But it doesn't feel like it really is adhering to the moment. And we're not the people to talk about this, I guess, because I mean, not just
right.
I guess, I know, like this really isn't something that you and I are going to be able to really have a very insightful,
perspective on. But it did sort of, make me think more about how films like this are being marketed. As somebody who really enjoyed RBG, I do sort of see where they're coming from and how it's like, there are RBG action figures, and there's like this idea of like to sell feminism to people that does sort of rub me the wrong way as sort of as a man. And I'm curious where women really land on that. And I have a feeling that it's very complicated and some people are going to be disagreeing. And there was another thing. There's a line from the trailer where Ginsburg tells the judge that the word freedom doesn't appear in the Constitution, but it does. But it appears in the First Amendment. And I was curious, Will, if you remembered that moment in the movie, do they explain that it's in the First Amendment and that it was speaking more to like,
I believe it's
the original Constitution, I guess, or
I believe it's executed just the way it is in the trailer, but a little longer. As far as I recall, like I said, I mean, I don't remember exactly. I'm not going to say that's completely factually true, but I believe that's how it's executed as it is in the trailer.
Okay. It's not a big deal. I remember the screenwriter, Daniel Seipelman, actually responded to this and said that, the Constitution, he said it's always open to improvement, I think is what he said. And that was the point. And so I don't know. It's still though, it's just sort of like, it feels a little not dishonest, but I don't know. There's something about it that rubs me the wrong way. I still want to see this one. I hope I like it more. I like Mimi Leder, the director. She's done some shows that I really like.
Yeah.
Shameless. She's directed a bunch of episodes of that. Human Target, which I thought was a pretty decent show, and a bunch of other stuff. And I don't know. The only movie I think I've seen from her is Deep Impact. I know she's done a lot of other films, but yeah. I mean, this definitely seems like a film that I'll get to it when I get to it. But I don't know if it's high up on my priority list. Yeah,
I mean, like I just feel bad doing this review because I just don't want to be the guy that's panning this film. Because like I said, I don't take joy in doing this. Like this review, I mean, like I don't like criticizing this film. But you said like pandering and like stuff like that, and honestly, just that's how I felt. But I don't want to speak for anyone else. I mean, I'm glad I know people who have enjoyed the film, and I'm glad they enjoyed it. But I mean, for me, I felt like it was manipulative and shallow.
Well, if you are one of those people who enjoyed the film, we want to hear from you. And hopefully we can set the record straight, because we obviously want to get a more as balanced a perspective on this one as we can. Because it does sort of seem like a film that is getting warmly received by a bunch of people. So we don't want to be outliers without reason. It has a 74% on Rotten Tomatoes. So most critics are liking it. And I have a feeling that it's just fine. And when I do see it, I'll let you know, Will, how wrong you are. And
nothing I like to hear more is how wrong I am about this film. So like I said, I would love to be the person who's coming on here and being like, this is fantastic. I love this film, or the best year. I'm just speaking from the heart and saying that I don't think it's a very good film, but I want it to be good. But I would say definitely check out the documentary RPG. It's really good.
Yeah,
so check that out.
I want to rewatch it. It's a good film, and I hope a lot of people are able to catch it in theaters. But all right, this is an interesting episode of Cinemaholics. I'd say that we had a lot of different reactions to some very different films. Yeah. And I'm looking forward to seeing how everything plays out in our top 10 movies of the year, which may be coming next week. We don't know 100% for sure if that's really going to be the case. I mean, we have an interesting release schedule ahead of us. Will Ashton, next week, we're going to see a wide release. It's called Escape Room, which I don't know about you, but I want to see it. I really do. I think that it looks kind of interesting, but that's that new horror film where they're in an escape room, but it's like Saw. Yeah. But it also has some interesting kind of wild elements to it. And I don't know. I think it looks, there's always like a horror movie that comes out in early January. I think last year was Insidious, The Last Key. One year was The Forest with Natalie Dormer. There's always something. But this one actually looks like a step up. And if we do our top 10 next week, or if we wait to do it a week, I think hopefully we'll find some time to talk about Escape Room and maybe some other films. But until then, definitely let us know what you think of all the films we talked about this week. Send us your tweet-sized reviews of Vice, Bird Box, Beale Street Could Talk, everything we talked about. And don't forget to leave a review for this podcast. If you like our show, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher. Our show notes are in the episode description. You can find them, our Facebook, our Twitter, everything like that. And don't forget to enter our holiday giveaway. Become a patron of Cinemaholics if you are so inclined. If you want to help us out in a different way and donate on Patreon, you can find us at patreon.com/Cinemaholics or just go to the show notes. But for now, we'll have to leave you. For the Internet California, I am John Negroni.
And for the Internet Pennsylvania, I'm Will Ashton.
See you next time.